Idaho College and today's broadcast of the North Idaho College Public Forum. The crew is comprised of North Idaho College television students. Your moderator is North Idaho College political scientist Tony Stewart.
Welcome to today's program. Before introducing our distinguished guest, I want to take just a moment to say to all of our viewers that this is a very special day for us with this particular program. With the conclusion of today's program, we will have completed and finished our 10th year of broadcasting of the NIC TV Public Forum. This is a very special day for us to end a decade of this broadcast. I want to assure you that it is our plans to be back with you again next year for the 11th year. I would particularly address Janelle Burke, who's been with me 8 years of that time. And Janelle, we've been through many programs and interesting topics together, and I know it's a special day for you too.
Thank you, Tony.
To our guest today, our subject is going to be the communications revolution, which is a significant issue to be dealing with, and we've dealt with it earlier this year on this program in relation to the convocation series. We're happy to welcome to our program Dr. Frederick Williams. Dr. Williams is the founder and the former dean of the Annenberg School of Communications at the University of Southern California. He holds a baccalaureate degree from the University of Idaho, a master's and PhD degrees from the University of Southern California. He has taught on the faculty at the University of Wisconsin and the University of Texas. He has published a book recently, in fact, February of 1982, entitled The Communications Revolution. And it is also a special privilege to have him with us today because he is a native of Idaho and grew up in Coeur d'Alene and graduated from the Coeur d'Alene high school system. Dr. Williams, welcome home and welcome to our program.
Well, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. Marvelous day today.
Thank you. Our panel to question our important guest today is, first of all, Dr. Owen Cargill, who is Director of Planning at North Idaho College, Janelle Burke, a regular member of the panel, and I might add, just complete her second year of law school, and Tim Christie, who's a faculty member in the Department of Speech and also the debate coach at North Idaho College. Welcome to the panel.
Thank you.
I would invite Dr. Cargill to commence the questioning.
Thank you. Welcome to North Idaho, Dr. Williams. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the Annenberg School, perhaps some of its history and its current status.
Well, I'd be very happy to. There are really two Annenberg schools. The Annenberg School of Communications at the University of Pennsylvania was established about 23 years ago. And they work in a wide variety of areas of communication instruction, but with a particular emphasis on graduate instruction. The people in the master's program at Penn are typically be people that go out and work in industry, and people in the doctoral program typically become communications professors one place or the other. The school at USC was started about 9 years ago, and we're more specialized. While we're also a graduate program, we have a particular interest in the new communications technologies. When we first had the school on the planning boards, we thought that one of the greatest areas of change in our field were all of the new technologies, things like computers, satellites, videotape machines, cable television, et cetera, and that really we should have at least one school in the communications field that would attempt to unravel some of this or to train students to work in it or study it. And that's what we've been doing for about 9 years now. We have a master's program, a doctoral program, and we teach a few undergraduate classes, although we don't have an undergraduate program.
Thank you.
Janelle Burke.
You have just recently completed a book called The Communication Revolution. Can you tell us if you have a main thesis in the book or some of the themes from the various chapters of our book? Can you share with us?
Sure, Janelle. That's a topic very close to my heart. I had the good fortune to be the founding dean of the school at the University of Southern California, and after almost 8 years of hard work on that, I had the opportunity to have the first sabbatical of my entire academic career. And I had this book burning in me that I wanted to write. Now, it was, I think, book number 10. The previous books have all been textbooks or research books, and you think of a market. This was a book I just wanted to write. And this was a book about what we think is happening to our environment, to work, to recreation, politics, as a consequence of these new technologies I was mentioning earlier. The central thesis in the book is that we're not so much in an era of future shock today as rapid adaptation to change, that work is changing and leisure is changing, health is changing, and a lot of this change is due to our new uses of these communications technologies, and that's essentially what that book is about.
Tim Christie.
For a second, I'm going to ask you to be a fortune teller. In the 1950s and the 1960s, we never dreamed that we would have the kind of technology that we have now, computers, video games, the things that you just alluded to. What would you see us doing in the year 2000 with respect to communication?
Well, Tim, it's real easy to be a fortune teller because you're never called on the spot until the future happens. And then you can be in some other line of business. One of the fascinating things about communication technologies when you really study them seriously is there is about a 20-year span from drawing board to market. So interestingly, we're within that 20-year span or time horizon right now, and you can look at the drawing boards and see what kinds of technologies are coming down the line. I'll just give you a sampler because this could go on and on and on. We'd miss some important questions. But for one thing, computers will become less and less expensive and in the hands of more and more people, like already they're in the hands of our fifth graders. Cable television is in a veritable explosion right now. I think we can expect to see our country to maybe a 70–80% saturation point on cable TV in the homes, and it'll be more than just getting the formerly over-the-air programs. There will be specialized programs. There will be things like shopping services, things like fire and police services, communication services when you have a two-way cable, and that kind of thing. Another thing that is growing rapidly are the use of communication devices in business. The manager in the year 2000 who does not know how to work with information database, work with things like teleconferencing, will just simply not have an edge on his business or her business unless they know how to work these technologies.
Dr. Williams, recently on this program, Nicholas Johnson, that served on the LCC, and Dr. Rosenberg from Rutgers University addressed the political question that I am most interested in, and that is the question of national political candidates and the use of television to persuade the electorate to vote a certain way. I'm thinking to a book such as The Selling of the President and the use of money and the right type of personality, and even Dr. Rokeach, who was on this program, indicating that you can change people's political values as other values through the use of television. And since you're such an expert in the field, I cannot resist asking you the same question. What do you see as the potential of this particular type of media to affect the American voters and the type of people we will elect to the presidency and to the Congress of the United States?
This is, I think, an absolutely fascinating area of impact of the communications revolution. It is not one that I personally study in detail, but I try to keep up with it and stay talking to people that do. Two or three things that I think are fascinating about it. One is that not all types of political races are being affected by the electronic technologies. Local politics, and even in some parts of the country, regional county politics, or even some state politics, may not be as affected by, let's say, television exposure and television campaigns because they're too expensive. But maybe you have some radio, but still print is very big in local and regional races, where the impact of the communications revolution seems to be most is in those races where a large campaign purse is involved. So you have things like computerized mailing for fundraising, where you can pick out particular kinds of markets where you think you can do really effective fundraising, and you automate that fundraising. Constant polling, going out using face-to-face things, telephone polling, but putting that into a computer and comparing it with prior voting patterns of a precinct, so that a person can say, well, I should invest more of my campaign money over here because they're not quite as sure they're going to vote for me as these people over here. And then finally, the production of television commercials for candidates that are more than just like a one-shot commercial. I mean, there is an entire scenario written out as to how that campaign is going to appear on television. And these are produced by the same people that bring you patent medicine ads, sugar cereals, and it's the same kind of television that is sometimes 5 to 10 times the production cost of regular TV that you view. I mean, commercials are very expensive. There have been examples. There's a senator from a western state who was a Princeton man, and they wrote out a scenario for him. A California group wrote out a professional consulting group wrote out a scenario for him as to how they would make him sufficiently westernized in dress and being able to ride a horse and refer to certain things, and now that man is a prominent senator from a western state. And the scenario on that was laid out with no less talent than a John Wayne movie. So I think we have to look out for those kinds of things. We're, in that respect, where the electronic media come in, let's say, on television-type exposure, we are getting people to elect manufactured images.
Therefore, if we follow it from that viewpoint, there's a possibility that we do not elect the most qualified person or the person with the greatest substance, that it could be based upon the kind of money that they have at their disposal and the kind of personality in some cases.
I think there could be a definite danger. You know, we've had all these laws restrict certain, kinds of campaign giving and things like that, but if you realize in the last national election, we had the presence of what you call PACs, political action committees, which are able to bring together vast amounts of fundraising and put them with a candidate rather than a party. And so when that kind of money goes into a candidate's war chest, they can have the capability to produce the kind of TV that can manufacture the best image the writers and the camera people can put out there. And I think we have to look out for that.
Thank you. Dr. Cargill.
Yes, Dr. Williams, as an academic especially concerned about communications, I wonder if you could share with us and with our audience what you feel the communication needs of college students preparing to go out into the world of work in the 1980s.
That's a fascinating question, not just because I make my living in that area, but I don't think there has been an era in higher education where college students have been more interested in communications. They flock to journalism and broadcasting education type programs. Far more students want to go into these areas than there are jobs. But one real paradox in this is that despite all of this interest in communication and wanting to be communication professionals, I do honestly believe we have some problems with the basic communication skills of the college student of today. I have it even with my doctoral students writing dissertations. Problems of grammar and spelling. We are getting maybe a bit away from emphasizing the basic spoken and written skills in our school system. It's easy to blame the school system, I realize, maybe in our society. But I think we should have more classes in communication, natural kinds of communication, communication that's designed to teach a student how you accomplish things with communication. The deep levels to which interpersonal communication can evolve in interpersonal relationships, how to analyze arguments in a give and take, how to write clearly and to the point, and how to read something and get the point of it and go on to something else. I think we're falling behind on the basic skills in communication in our educational system, while at the same time as the students evolve through it, they want to be professional communicators.
Janelle Berg.
My question is going to be a broad one. One of our most important freedoms is freedom of speech, the First Amendment. What is your philosophy of teaching both the responsibilities and the freedoms that go along with the First Amendment, and have you noticed that there has been a shift in focus in the First Amendment freedoms?
The First Amendment is a incredibly challenging topic in our day and age, because we're now living in a society that could never have been imagined in the wildest dreams of our founding fathers who put that Constitution together. We may be living in a society where all the communication links would give us a democratic utopia. We would have a chance for all kinds of communication and information. Yet we have some real challenges that you can kind of tie to First Amendment sorts of thinking. For example, what's happening in cable television today? One of the things is the biggest market in cable television in new production is in pornography. If my university is right on the edge of Hollywood, and and I know a lot of people in the production community in Hollywood, and that production community runs on the basis of what you can borrow money to do. If you tend to produce in Hollywood what investors will invest in. And if you are doing soft porn today and you have halfway a good idea, you can go out and get money for that even if you have never done a movie before, because the market for that is growing. Now, obviously, we don't want to just have unlimited distribution of this kind of thing, but it becomes a First Amendment issue. You know, who controls this kind of thing? How, you know, that has to be figured out. Another problem, and I'll just state this one briefly, is the new technologies are allowing different institutions in our society to collect amazing amounts of information on people. Each one of us, there are people that have more information on each one of us than we can probably recall ourselves or find in those cluttered desk drawers at home. When you fill out a license application, your health records, your academic records, register for the draft, make insurance claims, all of these questionnaires and things we fill out, our credit, anytime you do a credit transaction with a credit card, that's all in somebody's database. Well, who owns all of that information? You know, should somebody be allowed to do anything they want to with that information? Can they sell it? For example, there's a furor in LA today about this last week. There's an organization that gathers information from landlords about tenants with whom they have problems. Landlord's Guide or something. Now, some young woman wanted to rent an apartment, and by mistake, she had a record in there. There's a mistaken name or something, and any landlord that belonged to this organization would not even, you know, let her put a down payment on an apartment. Now, she tried to find out what that system had about her, and they wouldn't let her do it. And there she was stuck in it. Now, there are rights of information in there involved in that. So the new technologies, just very simply, new technologies are putting so much information in so many different people's hands that we have questions about the control of it, access to it, freedom of use with it. And it just may be that if and when the Communications Act is ever rewritten, that we'll have to reflect some new thinking on First Amendment.
Tim Christie.
Taking this one step further, we look at the values in terms of communication. The value is obvious as far as information, willingness to know, or right to know. And the way that communication is, the avenues that it's taking, for example, in politics, we're selling people who may not have any concept of who they're representing. We're selling products that subtly are, in essence, selling sex and those sorts of things. Are the advantages and the benefits accrued from the technology worth some of the, you know, questionable things that are happening as a result of it?
Well, I think, you know, although that is an important question, the only way we can answer it is to say all we can do is the best we can, because these technologies are literally unleashed now in our society, and it'd be very, very hard to restrain them in any way or highly regulate them in any way. We would just have to say that we have to make the best of the situation. But one thing that people don't talk enough about is training of the consumer. Instead of trying to control the system so much and say, well, we'll only let the public see this or that or this, what could we do in our society that would teach people to separate information from foolishness? What could we do in our country to teach people how to find out the information that's important for their own life decisions? How can we teach people where to go to get the information? We did, in the Annenberg School about 5 years ago, we did a study in Los Angeles of different socioeconomic groups on where people go for information. In certain social classes and subcultures in that area, people do not know where to get information. The best they'll do is ask a relative, or they might ask a social worker. Whereas you get into other socioeconomic groups and they know that you can pick up the phone and call City Hall, and they know how not to be bluffed by City Hall to find out what it is. So somehow people are going to have to learn how to get around in the new information environment.
What do you think it's going to take to be a communicator in the year 2000 as an individual, to be effective at it?
Probably a great variety of different things depending upon the communication environment in which you work. I tend to define the term communication very broadly. So I consider a manager working at an information workstation, perhaps a computer, as being involved in communication year 2000. Or I would consider a person deciding how they want to spend the leisure hours in their home, sometimes a question or choices of communication, and maybe watching pay TV versus listening to music versus playing a chess game with somebody remotely via a computer link-up or something. So, Tim, I don't think that there is no one simple answer to this, but yet there is a general answer, and the general answer, I believe, is that people are going to have to learn how to use this environment, how to take advantage of it. It's like when the immigrants first came to the cities. I mean, it changed an environment maybe from a foreign country to this country, or from a rural environment to an urban environment, and they figure it out. They learn how to get what they need from it, and the people that can adapt to environmental change are the ones who generally come out ahead in society and are happy too. And it's that broad a thing, I think.
Dr. Williams, I was very impressed with what Nicholas Johnson had to say about technology in some of the same ways that you're talking about it. And one thing he indicated was that in the near future we might not be leaving our homes to do our work or to receive our education. In fact, he made the point that one could spend days in a rather isolated setting in order to function in society. If that comes to pass within our country, what kind of social implications will this have for the human race when they don't have as much interpersonal interaction as they normally have had in the past?
Well, that's a good question for me, because I absolutely disagree with Nick Johnson on it. I think he's, frankly, about 10 years out of date. What you tend to find out in the uses of the new technologies is that, first of all, in many cases, they shorten the amount of time you may have been spending doing a particular task. So they free time. If I can do my banking at home, I don't have to travel to the bank and to stand in line. And I always seem to stand in line behind that person who's putting in the week's deposits for a movie theater or something. I'm there a half an hour. You don't have to do that if you can do that from home. If I can pay my bills by sitting at my telephone and beeping in numbers or a little computer, that saves time. So one part of the response to your question is the answer has to do with time reallocation. A lot of the applications of the new technologies will allow us to reallocate time, and we may reallocate that time to taking walks, jogging, horseback riding, playing more softball, and that kind of thing. As a matter of fact, I just venture the point that we are beginning to see, when we look at some of the people who are doing studies of time reallocation, you're finding that people are using time reallocation to get out and do physical things, get out and enjoy the environment, and get together with people, okay? Now, another point on this is that a number of these technologies, even though a person may stay in their home, bring people together. We constantly study the college students at USC to see how they're using technology. You know what the college students' most valued communications technology is? The one they would not do without if, you know? Just make a guess.
Stereo.
Anybody?
Television.
Telephone?
Telephone. The telephone is by far the students' most valued communications technology. You say, why? Well, to make myself feel good, entertainment, stay in touch with my friends. And what is a telephone? The telephone is a technology that allows us to extend interpersonal communication anywhere that the electronic network goes. So think of time reallocation so people can use more time in personal and outdoor and activities they desire and less time standing in line at the bank. Also think that many of these technologies bring us more in interpersonal touch with people. Not just telephone, we have things like computer conferencing, that you can do now if you're into it. You can send electronic mail back and forth to people. You can play games jointly like that. Even the video games that everybody complains about, if you go down the arcade and look, a number of those games, you play with somebody on them. You play against somebody on them. So I really disagree with Nick Johnson on that. I think people will always want a degree of things that have to do with interpersonal relationships. Any humanistic psychology that you look at stresses that the greatest things we all want out of life are good human relationships, and I don't think we're going to give those things up to watch reruns.
Okay. Dr. Cargill.
Returning for a moment to the political uses of mass communication, in light of the recent hostilities between Britain and Argentina over the Malvinas Islands, I wonder if not the American people at this time are perhaps being manipulated by the British press and the Argentine press because of the telecommunications networks that are now available to them to present their side of any issue here in the United States. And
I don't know, Owen, whether that, I haven't thought about it that way quite. Maybe even if we were back just in an era of the printed press or World War II radio and movie newsreels, we would have that British bias because we're an extension of that culture, and we're not an extension of the Hispanic culture that much and the Argentine culture. What is bothering me or is curious or whatever about that is the television coverage of it. The other night in Los Angeles, I was watching the evening national news, and they had split screen type treatments of Costa Minza, I think his name is, the Argentine foreign minister, and Pym, British foreign minister, and they were answering questions asynchronously. Questions they weren't really on together live, but they were getting split screened on TV about, well, now if the British did this, what would you do? You know, and what do you think about this? And then over there. 5 minutes later, I was watching Family Feud, and they had the two families on split screen while somebody was answering questions up there. You know, what I fear is that maybe it's getting harder and harder to distinguish game shows from wars on TV, and we better be careful because, you know, we're personally not down there. And when I heard on the radio today that, you know, 21 soldiers went down in a helicopter, that's 21 lives. And look at the bloodshed.
Dr. Williams, I'm so sorry to have to interrupt, but the time is up, and I want, on behalf of our staff, to express our deep appreciation. You've been most informative, and you've certainly added to the quality of this program, and we thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. Pleasure to be here, and very nice to meet all of you.
I would also, before our public, like to thank Dr. Williams for giving his honorarium today to the North Idaho College library building that's going to be constructed in the future, and we appreciate that contribution very much.
My pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, our guest has been Dr. Frederick Williams, who is the founder and the former dean of the Annenberg School of Communications at USC, where he is also a faculty member. And we've been talking about the communications revolution. Hope you've enjoyed our program and that you'll be with us again next week at this very same time. Please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
The North Idaho College Public Forum can be seen at this same time each week over this station. This production was videotaped earlier by a North Idaho College student crew for viewing at this more appropriate time.